Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm talking about wedges and a specific kind of wedge. If you're looking or you're in the market for a new wedge or a wedge series to add to your set, then the new CB from Callaway, a cavity back wedge, which is more forgiving, could be the answer for you. If you're in the market for a new wedge, then the new Callaway CB could be the one for you. This is the real kind of first wedge. If you're looking to add a wedge to your set, which is as forgiving as the set that you're playing, then CB wedges are probably the way to go. There's an awful lot of wedge series out there, but there's none really like the Callaway CB. It's a cavity design, that's what CB stands for, cavity back. But I don't believe it's the cavity back which is really going to help you the most here. It's the sole design and to a certain extent also the face design by the higher lofted wedges which will help you. When you look at the majority of specialized wedges, they're built in a kind of a blade format, which means they have a slightly or a small head. Usually there is no cavity back, so no spreading out of the weight over the club face. And then they have a pretty small sole. And it's this which actually makes the difference when you're playing with wedges, because of the turf interaction between the sole and the turf. Why? Well, if you look at the majority of beginners and intermediate players' sets, you'll actually find they have a rather wide sole on them. And there's a reason for this, because as a beginner or an average player, you tend to come into the ball quite steeply. Then this sole is basically forgiving that. It's stopping the leading edge digging into the turf and stopping the club going through the ball. And these wedges are actually built with a wider sole. There's two different types: the wide sole, which actually fits into the higher lofts, the sand wedges, and a slightly thinner but still quite a wide sole for the normal kind of gap wedges from 46 to 52. You'll also find that the grooves have been extended on the higher lofted wedges so that you're still getting a good spin off the club face irrespective of where you actually hit it on the face, which is obviously different to the normal, or a departure to the normal wedge shape, which just has the grooves in the center, so you have to hit it out of the center to get the best spin on the ball, especially if you're playing in wet or autumn conditions, we could say. But as I said before, it's the grind and the bounce on these clubs which is really going to help you. Now, I know a lot of people don't really understand much about grind and bounce, but it's really pretty simple. The grind is basically the width and the way that the club has actually been grinded down in order to shape the sole, and the bounce simply describes the difference between the leading edge and the bottom part of the sole as an angle. And the higher that this bounce is, the bigger the difference between the leading edge and the back of the sole is, which causes you to catch the ground with the back of the sole rather than with the leading edge, and is therefore more forgiving, especially in long grass in wet conditions. I've been playing with these wedges for a little while now, and I've actually found them not only very forgiving, but quite honestly very nice to play. They are not a forged wedge, but it still has a very soft sound when you hit the golf ball. I know a lot of people talk about the soft materials of, say, a forged iron and how they can feel the difference, but I believe that a great deal of this is really down to just the sound of the ball coming off the club face. And this gives a very satisfying sound. And that's really what you're looking for in a wedge. What it also gives is a good spin and a good flight. A lot of times if you've got a very wide sole, you'd be expecting the thing to kind of launch very highly, but this seems to have quite a good flight on it. And at the same time, I'm playing on a very wet kind of sandy ground here, but I'm having absolutely no problem in getting a good pure strike. And that's where I think these clubs are really going to excel if you try them. In a lot of cases, just catching the ground a little bit before the ball will make it a poor shot. And irrespective of what club you're taking, I'll just take the 60 degree here, which has got really the widest sole on it, and is really going to help me out. Even if I catch the ground a little bit before the ball, I can kind of feel that turf interaction. I can feel the club sliding into the back of the ball, not digging into the ground. And this is what makes them such great fun to play with. So really, they're for all standards of golf. You can, if you've been struggling with your wedges in the past, try these things out, because they could be the answer to all of your problems. And I tell you, when you start to actually hear that kind of nice crisp sound, watch that golf ball kind of stop up on the green, there's nothing more fun, and it takes so much pressure off the rest of your game. And playing with a good series of wedges will obviously help you to kind of fill those gaps in your set. The modern sets where you can have pitching wedges that have as little as 43 degrees, so they're almost like an old 8-iron when I started playing the game. And then you've got your sand wedge with 56 degrees. You've got this massive gap in between. So if you're hitting full shots, you could have 20, 30 yards between your pitching wedge and your sand wedge, if not more. So it makes sense to have a couple of clubs in there. And I think as the majority of you out there are probably not playing your long irons as much, there's plenty of room in your bag to put in a couple of wedges. The question is just which ones. But it's around the green that these clubs are really going to come into their own. These wedges wide sole are going to help you to get through the longer grass and through the turf, especially if it's a little bit wet and soggy around the greens in the autumn. Why is this so important? Because when you're actually swinging a golf club and making a full swing, you've got so much club head speed, you're going to just take a divot. You might hit it a little fat, the ball might go a little shorter, but at least the shot's not lost. If, however, you do the same thing when you're chipping or pitching a ball, there's a great chance of the club actually really stopping in the dirt and the ball hardly making it to the green side. I've been trying these up for chipping, and here I've got a 52 degree wedge. Now normally a 52 degree wedge or approach wedge has got a very thin sole, so it's got the same chance basically of being stopped up by the grass as chipping with a 7 or an 8 iron has. But obviously with your 7 or your 8 iron, it's going off and it's really going to run out. This 52 degree wedge here has got the perfect loft for this shot. I can just land it kind of halfway to the hole and just let it roll out to the rest of the hole. And if I were to catch it a little bit fat, then this sole's going to save me. Let the club slide into the back of the ball, and it's going to be a usable chip shot, irrespective of my inability to play it correctly. But what's really good fun is when you start chipping and pitching with a lob wedge. A disaster for an awful lot of amateur golfers simply because they are difficult to use. Why? Because they have a very thin sole. Usually they're made for good players who are wanting to open the face and do all kinds of wonderful things with it. But if you're just a standard hobby golfer who's got a flag which is only a couple of meters on the green, and you've got a lot of foregreen in front of you, you've got longer grass that you can't putt through, then the lob shot or the lob wedge would be the one for you. This lob wedge you can play with confidence. You're not going to get hung up in the longer grass. You're not going to be stopped by a little bit of a fat shot. And as you can see here, you can play the shot then quite aggressively without having to fear what could go wrong. And if you practice with these things for a little while, you might actually find that you're taking a lot of pressure off your long game because you're getting more and more confidence around the green. Now, it's very rarely that I go off on one when it comes to golf clubs, but again, I think this is the kind of golf club that you want to be looking for if you do struggle around the green. Rather than letting your ego make the choice, go to this wider sole. If you put it on the ground, you can't see that it's got a wider sole, but it does work. If you've got these extended grooves on the face, it doesn't matter where you hit the ball on the face, you're still going to get spin on the ball. If you've got a cavity back, you've got more weight around the toe and the heel. So if you don't hit it out of the center of the golf club, you're still getting a similar ball speed. And all of these things put together mean that you're getting the result that you want. I'm a Callaway ambassador, so obviously I have a little bit of a bias when it comes to Callaway golf clubs, but hand on heart, these things will help your game, especially if you aren't the best around the green. Give them a try. If they're not on the pro shops yet, they will be very shortly. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to me yet, please do that as well. The little bell will give you notifications the next time that I post a video. Until the next one, look after yourself. Until then, bye-bye.